In January 2021, Governor Charlie Baker signed into law the Economic Development Bill. Part of the bill requires communities with public transportation to create zoning for multifamily housing. After the state issued its draft guidelines in December, municipalities had 3 months to submit comments and will need to decide whether to comply and how to comply by the end of this year. Non-compliant communities will lose access to some state funds that support local infrastructure and planning initiatives. Municipal producer Yu Xiaoyuan reports how it will affect Needham and what steps need to take to participate.
The requirements include creating at least one 50-acre district where multifamily housing can be built by right, at a minimum density of 15 units per acre. The district must be no more than a half mile from a transit station, suitable for families with children, and have no age restriction. Based on what type of public transit service a community has, the guidelines determine a community's unit capacity, which is the minimum number of multifamily units that can be developed in the new zone.
We know that there are a lot of other factors that play into if a development actually comes to fruition. The requirements at the state are not that the units end up getting built, it's what does the zoning allow.
Needham is considered a bus service community, which means 20% of its total housing stock will need to be multifamily. According to the 2020 census, the town has 11,891 housing units, which means Needham will need to allow at least 2,378 multifamily units in the designated zoning districts. However, Assistant Town Manager Katie King said Needham does not quite fit the definition of a bus service community in the draft guidelines. In the comment letter Needham sent to the state, the town requested it to be a commuter rail community.
The current guidelines, there's a lot of attention around being able to build out multifamily housing in connection to stations, either commuter rail stations or bus stations. And under the draft guidelines, Needham actually doesn't have any bus stations. We only have bus stops. So a station would be the intersection of 2 bus lines. And so because we don't have an ability under the draft guidelines to really take advantage of our bus route, it seems more appropriate and fitting to designate Needham as a commuter rail community because we have those 4 stations.
Right now, 3 districts in Needham strewn over 22 acres of land where multifamily housing is permitted by right are within the half-mile radius of a rail station. There are a total of 396 units in these districts. However, because the guidelines also require at least one contiguous 25-acre zone and no single zone can be less than 5 acres, 2 of the districts will not meet the requirement. Within the half-mile radius, Needham also has 4 commercial districts where multifamily housing is allowed by special permit and would meet the state guidelines with some zoning changes, such as allowing as-of-right development or increasing the density. Other suggestions Needham submitted to the state include eliminating the 25-acre contiguous parcel requirement and allowing to count existing 40B units that are outside of the half-mile radius but achieve the 15 units per acre density towards their unit capacity. Needham has a total of 876 40B units that would meet that definition. Also allowing to count parcels within a half-mile of a bus stop, not just a bus station, towards the compliant zoning.
Regardless of how we're defined as a community, being able to include distance from a bus route gives us even more opportunity to think about where we would want to locate multifamily housing as of right. And there may be places right now that are around a bus route that we would really want to think about as a good location. Under the draft guidelines right now, that wouldn't actually count towards your requirement for the district.
The state will release its final guidelines in the summer. The community must complete an action plan for creating the compliant zoning by the end of this year. The state will finish reviewing all the submissions by July 1, 2023. The zoning must be adopted by the end of 2023 for bus service communities and by the end of 2024 for commuter rail communities. The town asked the state to set the deadline for final zoning compliance for all communities to the end of 2024.
This is going to be a long planning process. We want to have community engagement around it. Needham is better situated than a lot of communities to come ultimately into compliance with these guidelines. I think the discussion will be, there may be 10 different ways to form a district that meet the requirements, and it's really going to be up to those boards with jurisdiction in the community which levers and policy changes they want to consider.
For Needham Channel News, I'm Yu Xiaoyuan.